Coming up next on Executive Caterers Corporate Club at Landerhaven, we have our election special. For the Republicans, we have Bob Bennett, chairman of the statewide party, and Rob Frost, chairman of the Cuyahoga County party. And on the Democratic side, we have Chris Redfern, chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party, and Stuart Garson for Cuyahoga County. The program will be moderated by Fox 8's Emmy Award-winning anchor, Bill Martin.
From the Grand Ballroom at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, thank you for joining us as we celebrate more than 20 years of presenting important and timely discussions. Corporate Club is the direct link for community leaders to connect with regional businesses, government, and nonprofit organizations. This series of programs deals with those issues and persons that impact on the lives of those who live in Northeastern Ohio. Corporate Club at Landerhaven begins right now.
Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here at our corporate luncheon at Landerhaven. We're so happy to have all these gentlemen here. We're going to talk down and dirty politics today. You ready for that? Everybody says yes. Let's start with the news cycle. We'll work into as many topics as we can. Today, there was an attack on the embassy in Libya. The ambassador was killed, several other people. There's an attack also on our embassy in Egypt. There are uprisings now in Gaza. The criticism has been that this president, without being involved in the Middle East, has created a vacuum. We're starting to see these uprisings, different kinds of things happen. There's a large Jewish vote here. There's been criticism from Israel that the U.S. is unengaged and causing a very dangerous situation as well. A lot of military folks come from Northeast Ohio as well. How do you see the president's performance in world affairs, and in fact, is the criticism legitimate? Want to start?
Well, Bill, I think that it's quite obvious that there's a disconnect between the president and the leadership in Israel, for sure. And that is not something new that occurred yesterday or the day before. I think also the problem that you have is that there is no firm policy coming out of Washington in dealing with the Middle East and with the situation, whether it's in Iran, whether it's been in Libya, and certainly look at what's happening in Syria with numerous murders that are taking place by the regime over there against the population, virtually destroying Aleppo and some of the other cities over there. So there is no firm U.S. policy, and I think there's been a complete disconnect. And we've kind of left Israel on its own to deal with the situation in the Middle East.
Chris,
that's my opinion.
Thank you, Bob. Chris, will the president lose votes in Ohio because of this perceived problem?
Well, I always appreciate Bob Bennett's comments. By way of introduction, I'm chairman of the Democratic Party in the state. My name's Chris Redfern, and again, thanks for the invitation. We're all entitled to our own set of opinions, but we're not entitled to our own set of facts. Here are a couple of the facts. The president's position on Israel is almost identical to the position that George Bush had, with one exception. The Democratic Party has a plank in its party that recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The GOP never did during the 8 years President Bush was in office. That's a fact. Additionally, if you were to look at the work that's been done in Northern Africa as well as the Middle East and then move over to Afghanistan, the president has in fact led. His position, the strongest relationship we can possibly have with our strongest ally, Israel, the work that's been done to marginalize Iran, to ensure that we're not going to emotionally go into another war as we did in Iraq, recognizing the implications for the region, not just from a military perspective, but also from an economic perspective, and the end result it would have on the nation going forward. I think this president, I think our president, has done exceedingly well, and I juxtapose what the president has said just this very day, as well as Secretary Clinton, with that of what Governor Romney indicated a couple of minutes before midnight last night when he used what was a profoundly complicated issue and what occurred in Libya, and tragic as well, in Libya and in Egypt, and Governor Romney used it for political pursuits. And it's unfortunate. I think the American people are responding today and will continue to respond. And we'll all have a chance to weigh in when early vote starts in just over 3 weeks.
Stuart, I was in Israel, in Galilee, when a group from the restaurant came out and started cheering George Bush then. This relationship seems much frostier than during the Bush administration. What is your take?
Well, I think appearances can be deceiving. There's certainly nothing in the Obama administration record that would indicate there has been any withdrawal of support for a safe and secure Israel, be it financial assistance, military assistance. They've put forth a $3.1 billion military assistance package, the largest in history. They've doubled the Israeli defense missile system, the Iron Dome project. And I just want to, if I can circle back to what was said before, I just want to say that today, folks, we're all Americans. This is absolutely not the time for any of us to be playing politics with a very volatile and a very, very difficult situation. Believe me, if we had a simple answer for this situation, we would have solved it by now. But this is the most complicated dynamic on the face of this earth today. And all we can do is hope that we put in the best possible leadership that we can and support that leadership. I believe that the Obama administration, certainly its record on Israel, has been absolutely in favor of a safe and secure Israel, and this canard that somehow Israel is going to be less safe if Obama is elected for another 4-year terms is just that. It's a canard.
All right, Rob, why don't you wrap it up for us? Is there a vacuum being caused by this president? Will he lose votes in the county?
Well, let me start by echoing Stuart's comment that this is a time when we need to support our commander-in-chief, our forces abroad, as well as our personnel abroad working for the government or otherwise. We do need to come together as we did after 9/11 11 years ago. This is a time of concern for our position, though, in the international community. And so not looking at the most immediate events, but looking more broadly at the changes in the Middle East, we have seen even self-defined leadership from behind on Libya. And what we need is America, the sole great superpower in the world, to lead from the front, to lead by example. We need to get back to leadership out of the White House.
All right, let's talk about the economy right now. Let's start with state politics, first of all, since that's your expertise. The unemployment rate in Ohio is going down. We're one of a handful of states where the economy is actually improving, people going back to work. The credit goes to our Republican governor, John Kasich, or Democratic President, Barack Obama, or maybe a little bit of both. Chris, why don't you start?
Well, if I may, all 50 states have seen a reduction in the unemployment rate over the course of the last 4 years. So it's not just Ohio. It's all 50 states have seen a reduction in the unemployment rate. If you look at the unemployment rate today nationally and compare it to Ohio, of course, we're about a point and a tenth of a point ahead of where
that's
the
because people have dropped out of the
average.
workforce. They're not being counted anymore.
In my estimation, according to the Department of Labor statistics as well as the Department of Development here in the state of Ohio, as much as we like to, from a partisan perspective, point fingers and suggest that perhaps it's because en masse millions of people in Ohio have given up, 850,000 jobs were saved with the protection of the American automobile industry. And I know some of my Republican friends kind of shrug their shoulders and say it didn't have much impact. I didn't see much shrugging of the shoulders when George Bush injected important capital to save the American airlines industry in the months after 9/11. I didn't see the same shrugging of shoulders when President Nixon injected millions of dollars of capital into the rail industry in the early 1970s to save the rail industry. I didn't see the same kind of shrugging because, frankly, we didn't have a hyper-partisan environment in those days, in those months, in those years as we do today. Here are the facts. 82 of 88 counties have a supplier to the American automobile industry as well as Honda of America in those counties, including Cuyahoga County. And if the president or Senator Brown or, frankly, Paul Ryan, the nominee for vice president on the Republican ticket, had walked away from the American automobile industry, we would be in a hole much wider and much deeper. Are we on the path to recovery? Let's look at Wall Street, more than doubled over the course of the last 4 years. NASDAQ at 11-year highs. If you look at hiring that's being done in the manufacturing sector, 600,000 new manufacturing sector hires east of the Mississippi and 4.6 million new jobs created in the last 4 years. Is there more work to be done? Absolutely. Is there a greater responsibility to accept? Without question. But are we on the right track? The numbers, frankly, speak for themselves.
Numbers spinning or not?
Yeah, definite numbers spinning. I mean, look at the auto industry in Ohio. We have actually lost a couple thousand jobs over the course since the auto bailout in Ohio in the overall auto industry. So you can't claim the auto industry and the saving of the auto industry for the creation of hundreds of thousands of jobs under Governor Kasich. And that's where you see the change beginning to take place. John Kasich and the leadership in the Ohio General Assembly. You know, as for the auto bailout and the shrugging of the shoulders, I guess shrugging is hyper-partisan. I don't know. I've never heard it described as such. But you know, clearly on the auto bailout, something had to be done. In fact, it was initiated under President George Bush. The question of methods and what needed to be done, and whether what was done was as effective as it could have been and was too costly to the taxpayer, or $80 billion in cost to the taxpayer, to choose winners and losers and ask those retirees from Delphi who didn't happen to be union clients of the Democratic Party whether they think that was the best method by which to go about it.
Stuart?
And Bill, I did want to mention, I guess you were called partisan as well there, I'm not sure, but talking about people dropping out of
I've been called worse.
Talking about people, exactly. Talking about people dropping out of the workforce, the right indicator to look at is the the labor participation rate. The lowest labor participation rate since 1981, 63.5%. And for men, male participation over the age of 16 in the labor force, the lowest since they've been keeping records back to 1948. That's a deplorable record under this president.
Does that include Ohio? So if we're going to praise John Kasich for growth in the economy, we can't out of one side of the mouth make that praise and on the other side say adult participation in the labor market is at record lows.
You don't think so when he's dealing with those headwinds out of Washington, yet we're making huge progress and we've brought the unemployment rate down here in Ohio? You don't think that's consistent right there?
I was very purposeful when I mentioned Paul Ryan's support of the auto rescue to point out that Republicans and Democrats supported that investment of capital. I was very purposeful, as I have in the past, to mention that it was George Bush's idea to rescue through TARP financial institutions. I've been very purposeful in pointing out that the automobile rescue was actually an idea of George Bush. And over the course of the last couple of years, a lot of things changed, especially during a campaign cycle. We cannot at one time, at one very moment during a luncheon, point out the good work that John Kasich may or may not have done, but then point out that white adult participation in the labor market is the worst record since 1981, because that includes Ohio. If you look at the broad indicators, we are making progress. Is there more work to be done? Without a doubt. But over the course of the last 4 years, are we in a better situation today than we have been? Ask Osama bin Laden, ask those workers at Lordstown, ask those workers at Jeep. It's a compelling narrative that's factually based.
Stuart?
I don't really care in the scheme of things who gets credit. What I do care about is that we're making progress. And, you know, to parse, does Kasich get credit? Does Obama get credit? I believe that the Obama administration and the policies they've put in place have been a big part of this platform upon which we are building jobs today, not only in Ohio, but elsewhere. Are we in a difficult situation? You bet. Did we lose a ton of jobs? Yeah. Why? Anybody remember what was going on 4 years ago? And I think that, and I want to get into education, but I won't bring it up in this segment because I assume, Bill, you'll bring it up. So I'll save those remarks. But the point I simply want to make here regarding the situation we're in right now, we took the sponge and we wrung it out, and we lost 8 million some jobs over the last 4 years. Most of those jobs were lost in the first 6 months, the last 3 months of the Bush administration and the first 3 months of the Obama administration. The fact of the matter is, those jobs, because of increased productivity, many of those jobs simply are not going to come back, and that gets into my education segue later, but in terms of what we need to do to start training people for those jobs that do exist, but we don't have enough trained people to fill those jobs. But I'll reserve those comments when we get to that segment.
So there was criticism before, Bob, that the state was riddled with regulation. We can talk about that later as well, because that's a criticism of this president, and he has added thousands of pages of regulation. Whether good or bad, we'll talk about that another time. The governor has talked about getting rid of regulation, allowing businesses to come back to Ohio. How do you see that? And then
Well, I think that the
We can
proof of
address
the pudding
the other
is the number of jobs that have been created in Ohio, 122,800. And Rob is absolutely right. There are 4,000 fewer automobile jobs in Ohio than there were 4 years ago. And we have a basic philosophical difference in what happened in the auto industry. When the government picks and chooses winners and losers, and that's what they did in the General Motors case, rather than let it go through a structured restructuring through the federal courts, they're picking winners and they're also picking the losers. Delphi is a good example, where they lost their pensions, no jobs, and basically got wiped out with the pensions. More importantly, those of you who may have had your own private pension funds that held General Motors bonds, for instance, those were also wiped out. Bondholders were wiped out because of the government action, not because of any structured court action. And that's the difference and the basic difference between the Republican position and the Democrat position on this. We just feel that it's better for the individuals to work it out within the structure of the federal court system as opposed to the government picking and choosing. Now, getting back to regulation, which I think is vitally important, is the governor has taken and it created 122,000 plus jobs in Ohio, and there's no question that getting rid of some of the horrendous regulations has helped. Also, we've had an increase in our gas exploration here that has created jobs, and these are not these are new jobs in Ohio, so they're not the old manufacturing jobs. If you really look at what's happening in the manufacturing section, we have a tremendous increase in productivity in Ohio, which means that we're getting more work per man hour out of our manufacturing. What's happened? Many of them have gone to automation in a lot of the factories. Many of the manufacturings that are still around have able to increase productivity by taking advantage of new technology within their factories, and they're producing the same amount of goods or greater amount of goods with fewer workers. I agree with the Democrat chairman here. You must be able to retrain people for the new jobs that exist here. If you go through the newspapers, there are jobs out there. There are people looking for jobs, particularly in the related manufacturing field, that aren't being filled today because we don't have the qualified workers to do that. And that gets back to the education.
We're going to talk about that coming up. We got 2 minutes left. It's all yours. Take us to the break.
I'm curious when we talk about a government doesn't pick winners or losers. If you eat at Cracker Barrel, I guess that's a loser because John Kasich picked the winner, Bob Evans. If you purchase your greeting cards from Hallmark, you're the loser. If you bought them at American Greetings, you're the winner. So the government does pick jobs. The Third Frontier program, my friends, is built around the prospect that you apply, you present, and you look for government support for your idea. That's a winner versus a loser. This notion that government doesn't pick winners or losers. There's a reason why 271 was built, winners and losers. There's a reason why 480 was built, winners and losers. The fact of the matter is that there are core responsibilities the government provides. And if you could provide me with a list of 5 regulations that Governor Kasich was solely responsible for stripping away that have created more than one job, I'm eager to hear it.
This is more than an interesting election coming up, and I'm still confused why there are undecided voters after you hear both sides talking here. But there are undecided voters out there. We'll talk education, we'll talk unemployment rate, food stamps, we'll talk many other things as well as your questions when we come back at Landerhaven.
Landerhaven was created for that special moment in people's lives, and that special moment is a wedding reception. From the concept to the decorations to the entrance down the staircase, creating the magic with great service, fine wine and food, an elegant wedding cake, beautiful grounds and gardens, unforgettable images. For a wedding reception you'll always remember, Executive Caterers at Landerhaven.
Is it getting so frustrating at your office that it's harder and harder and harder to get any work done? You need services you can count on, starting with business class phone from Time Warner Cable Business Class. Get business class phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Why put up with more frustrations than you have to? Enjoy our reliable solutions. Get business class phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Time Warner Cable Business Class.
You live in Ohio, you work in Ohio. And when you have questions about your health insurance, you like talking with someone who's right here in Ohio. That's why you carry the Medical Mutual card. Our card comes with the best customer service anywhere. More than 2,700 dedicated employees are right here in Ohio. It's our job to take care of your healthcare needs, so you can focus on what's most important, getting well. Medical Mutual, the official health insurer of the Cleveland Indians, Cavaliers, and Browns.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
I have received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
With our hopes and the world's hopes for peace and the balance every day, I do not believe that I should devote an hour or a day of my time to any personal partisan causes or to any duties other than the awesome duties of this office, the presidency of your country. Accordingly, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Welcome back, everybody. Normally studio lights, I can't see everybody, which is usually good because they're not that attractive. You all are very attractive. I can see most everybody here. Yeah, one applause for an attractive person. Let's talk economy in Ohio. We'll continue on with that, and then we'll get into education. Around the country right now, we have 47 million people on food stamps. The unemployment rate is above 8%. Millions of Americans are out of work, and many now have given up looking for work. Who wants to start us off? Stuart?
Why not? You have to look at where we started and where we are today. And 4 years ago we were not in a good place. As I indicated before, getting feedback here. Can you hear me okay? All right. What we started off before is, look, we want, as Democrats, this is about building a platform under everybody upon which everybody has an equal opportunity to compete and has the same rights and privileges, at least the same starting point that everybody else has.
What does that mean?
What it means is that families first, safe communities, and an enduring economy. What it means is policies that support and encourage families, that assist families in raising their children, supporting policies that assist the middle class, safe communities that basically make sure that police, fire, school teachers are properly paid for, and that we have those resources. I've noticed Mayor Earl Lakin over here from Shaker Heights. Mayor Lakin just had to pass a tax levy because money that normally went to the municipalities was held back by the state of Ohio. The fact is, we have communities that are under incredible stress today, and we need policies, that economic policies, along with matters such as affordable health care. Why is affordable health care just not only important to the people that get it, but it stabilizes families? And if you have a sick kid and you've got the ability to have that kid treated, you're probably going to be a better worker. You're probably going to be more productive, and that's a good thing. That's a value that I think we would all share. Certainly, communities that have sufficient police, fire, and public assistance for education. That's a good thing. Any mayors here that are involved in school systems? I know Shaker Heights has been a terrific school system, but it's a struggle. And so we need to have a platform. We need to have a level playing field upon which everybody has a right to a good public education, everybody has a right to safe and secure communities, and everybody has a right to an enduring economy.
Do you favor taking more from the so-called wealthy to balance the books?
Well, it's going to have to come from somewhere. And the fact of the matter is, who's in a better position to pay for those revenues or those enhanced revenues than the extremely wealthy? Look, we have a deficit problem in this country. We all agree. I don't think this is. I think can we agree on one thing? We got a deficit issue. All right. The fact of the matter is, what's the largest component of our deficit? The largest component were the Bush-era tax cuts. If you just eliminated the Bush-era tax cuts and allowed them to expire, half the deficit is gone. Now, this reminds me of a movie I saw years ago, but the fact that we won't talk about Bush-era tax cuts, this is like doing Hamlet without talking about Hamlet. The fact of the matter is, we've got to start where the problem is. And at that point, we can then look at 2 unfunded wars that we didn't pay for. We put on the credit card. One we've wound down, another one we're winding down. That will generate some savings. And then we can get to entitlement reform, which the largest components of entitlement, or at least of that piece, or the largest pieces of the deficit remaining are the defense spending, Social Security, and Medicare. But if we aren't prepared to start with deficit reduction from those Bush-era tax cuts, I think we're fooling each other. And quite frankly, with all due respect, gentlemen, the most powerful person today in the Republican Party is Grover Norquist, who basically has gotten our Republican friends here to sign pledges that they're scared to death to go back on. We just chased a very moderate Republican, Steve LaTourette, out of office because he was on the wrong side of that situation.
Rob, I've seen figures as well that letting at least the tax cuts from the Bush era expire on the wealthy Americans could cost this country another 700,000 jobs.
Well, it's interesting. We heard before the break there about the desire to not, see claim taken or apparently blame assigned either, and that's all fine and well and good, but we're here in the final 2 months before an election. It's decision-making time, and we have to decide if the policies we've been pursuing have been working. And the truth is, while I believe in this president's sincerity, I believe that President Obama wanted to bring the economy back, and sure, the economy was already in tough straits when he took office. It's gotten worse. The Obama administration identified that if they didn't do something, that unemployment was going to rise over 8%, and instead we went up to 10%, and we've never gotten below 8% since. This president's policies, while perhaps sincere, have failed, and we do need a change, and for many of the reasons that you identify. And so this idea, well, what about these Bush-era tax cuts? Well, even President Obama and others on the Democratic side have said, well, we're in a recession. This is no time to raise taxes. Our economy, if you follow their logic, would be worse off if taxes were higher. What the fallacy being pursued here is that if taxes were higher, that GDP would not be lower, which in fact it would. If we were to lower taxes, we would have the dynamic growth that we need yet again in this country. Instead, we've got millions more on welfare, millions more unemployed due directly to the policies this president has pursued, which have taken a bad situation and made it, frankly, much worse.
Chris, isn't it legitimate, the narrative, to ask the question that's been asked before? Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Oh, absolutely.
So are we.
Without question.
And how do you answer that?
In my father's Republican Party, my old man would judge the worth of a president based on the stock market. It was a fairly good indicator of both short-term and long-term confidence. Some people say that's not a good indicator. Now it's white adults available in the labor market in a set number of states. Fair enough. My old man's Republican Party, they looked at debt and taxes. 95% of Americans today have received a tax cut under this president. In my old man's Republican Party, we celebrated strength abroad and peace at home. We ended a war that we were all lied into under a Democratic administration, and we are on a pathway to coming home from Afghanistan. And as a brother of a kid who served 5 tours, I'm celebrating all of those things. Now, with all due respect, we don't have to pretend that the Republican Party was invented 3.5 years ago. We can look back over the course of the preceding 8 years and see how it went when we afforded the wealthiest among us a tax cut, hoping that that infusion of capital would mean an expansion of the middle class. And we can ask, and I'm not asking rhetorically, how'd that go? We can blame President Obama for a lot of things. We cannot blame him for this recession. We just simply can't, because he wasn't president. So you just look at the past indicators. Now, in my old man's Republican Party, the party of Dwight Eisenhower, there was always a question about whether or not you're going to contract the military or expand the military in times of peace. I mean, the Republican Party today is a party that's dominated by Tea Party principles, far-right extremists, and the party of Richard Lugar, the party of George Voinovich, quite frankly, is no more.
It's nice to see everybody smiling up here when things are said.
I mentioned Dick Lugar's name. I think that generates some smiles.
Let me ask you this question. Laura Ingraham, a conservative radio talk show host, she's a Fox News contributor, said yesterday on a radio show, if the Republicans do not beat President Obama in this election, they should disband the party. How do you respond to that?
The Republican Party is not going to disband over the next 4 years, regardless of what happens in the election. But I think that there's a couple of things that I'd like to comment on. And this is, yes, the recession started back under the previous administration, but President Obama has had 4 years to bring us out of it. We have people that are unemployed, underemployed, and if you look at the jobs, we're not even replacing the entrance, taking care of the entrance into it, and that's why we still have 8% unemployment. And in addition to that, we have a number of millions of Americans that have dropped out of the workforce that don't even show up in those statistics. The Democrat, this is the basic difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. Every single business in the United States that's successful today has gone through some type of reorganization to make themselves more profitable and more efficient. The only institution that I can think of that has failed to do that is government and government-related type jobs. We always want to address the problem by increasing taxes instead of taking a look at the fundamental organization of government, whether it's at the state or local level. And if you look at what the governors are doing, governors like Christie, look at Governor Walker in Wisconsin, or the governor in Florida, or Governor Kasich here, that addressed the $8 billion deficit. Is that forcing us to take a look at the structure of government? We certainly did it here in Cuyahoga County by going to a county form of government. We have 4 communities that are talking about merger here to become more efficient. We have people talking about merging dispatching and everything. These are just fundamental things that business has done over the number of years. Why do the Republicans object to raising taxes to take care of problems? Because we have to look at the institution of government and change it, and we haven't done that.
But Bob, that begs the question that I'll ask. How can one say that without recognizing that we are at the smallest growth of federal government since Dwight Eisenhower under this president, and we are at the lowest level of government in terms of the federal government size since Ronald Reagan under this president? I mean, the facts, you just lay them on the table. This is not rhetorical. It's not hyperbole. Those are just flat out facts. It's like me saying 95% of Americans have received a tax cut, federal tax cut. It's the truth. And I asked, name 5 regulations that have banned growth and created one job that Governor Kasich can take sole credit for doing away with.
Chris, I'll give you one credit, okay? Is the government has taken use of some modern technology in the delivering of services. Not very many. They haven't looked at the restructuring of the delivery of those services, but they've certainly our use of technology to produce some of those services. I think that's the basic thing that government has done. But
Sure. I was just going to get back to, I mean, Chris, you know, it's not how it works. You don't see a governor taking sole credit for anything. He's got to work with his legislature and his administration. What you do see, and we can talk anecdotally, there have been regulations that this governor, for example, there's one out in Lorain County, a company that makes sauces and needed to be able to buy alcohol at wholesale prices and was prevented by regulations here in Ohio, nonsense regulations that were archaic from doing that and expanding their business. Under Governor Kasich, under his direct leadership, not sole credit, this governor being able to work with others. You don't want someone who's trying to take sole credit. You want someone, and I know we're going to get to education, who, like Republican Governor Kasich, with Democrat Mayor in Cleveland, Frank Jackson, leaders, Democrat and Republican alike in the state legislature, reformed Cleveland public schools and how they're going to work very dynamically going forward. That's what this governor is doing.
All right, let's talk a little education here. The biggest news item in education right now is a pretty good strike going on in Chicago right now, where the teachers union right now is pretty angry with this current president, Rahm Emanuel, who was his chief of staff. So how do you see education playing out, Stuart, not only in this area, if you want to talk money as well, but nationally?
Well, you've got a civil war right now in the Democratic Party, so I'll let these two address it.
You know, do we have disagreements on policy? You bet we do. I mean, are we terribly unique? But I'll answer the question. I want to just make the point to the small business community. There's not a person in this room that gets up in the morning and issues a memo to its employees and say, you need to be as difficult as you can with one another. You need to not collaborate. You need not to cooperate with one another. And you need to take, whatever you do, make sure you tell every one of your customers to go to hell. Now, how long are you going to stay in business? Okay? That's government today. That's Washington, folks. And that's why maybe nothing gets done in the time frame that everybody would like to see it get done. Now let's get back to the education process. Okay. Education, at the end of the day, it's about how we choose. And I'm not an expert on what's going on in Chicago, so I don't want to try to extrapolate from Chicago.
There is a fight, though, with money. There's no money left. The country is broke, and so are the local governments.
Right. So the issue is funding for public education. And how do we choose to fund public education? I'll pivot back to Ohio. We had a DeRolf decision that came out, I think, in 1996 or 97, that basically said, and 3 times there were 3 permutations of that decision, that said how we fund education, that is the over-reliance on the property tax, is unconstitutional. Now, we've had a General Assembly for the most part of those years, controlled by my Republican colleagues. We haven't addressed the core problem of education. It's funding. How are we going to pay for the schools? Now, we can talk all we want, but you're not, you know, simply balancing education on the backs of one group, school teachers, is not going to do it. This is a global responsibility of everybody that has a stake in public education, and everyone's going to have to participate in that solution. And until we get our heads around the issue, which is the funding of our public schools, and then we can talk about consolidation of services and everything else, but don't tell me that school teacher salaries, that public unions are the problem.
Bob, we got about 2 minutes here.
Yeah, real quickly, is I think that you look at what Frank Jackson proposed for the Cleveland school system. I'm a resident of the city of Cleveland. I fully support what the mayor is trying to do, working out with the governor. Is again, I think you have to take a new look at how you're delivering the basic product of education. And it's different in the urban areas than it is in the rural areas. I can take you to great public school systems throughout the state, and they're west, most of them are west of Interstate 75, and they have great teachers and they're getting a great education there. But I think that when we lump everything together and say that we're going to produce education in the same way, in the same manner as we've done in the past with the teachers' unions, I think that it's just the wrong approach. And as far as Chicago, let me comment on two things. California passed a budget that is subject to a tax increase on the ballot in November. Chicago is broke. There is no more money. It's one of the highest tax states in the union. Both run by Democrat governors, both on the verge of bankruptcy. And I just think that we have to take new approaches to the delivery of governmental services, and that includes education.
You guys,
and I think Frank Jackson's on the right.
30 seconds.
You realize the budget in Ohio is greater today than the day Ted Strickland left office, right? We're not under this false illusion that somehow John Kasich came in and cut the budget. It's factually incorrect. To my friend Bill, state government or local governments are broke because the local government fund here in Ohio over the course of the last 75 years has been stripped away by this governor. Not because of lack of resources, because the budget's higher today than it was 1 year ago. So the resources are there, the commitment isn't. And trying to create boogeymen, trying to place blame on one section or the other, government, teachers, what next? They're going to strip away collective bargaining rights for police and firefighters?
Well, I'll tell you,
they tried to do that, didn't they? I like how they continue to praise Democratic leaders like Frank Jackson, the mayor of Cleveland, and perhaps the next governor of the state of Ohio, Ed Fitzgerald. Keep praising those Democrats. I appreciate it, guys.
The current president, though, Chris, seems to be having difficulty deciding which side he's on in the Chicago dispute. If he'll take my advice, I'll tell him he needs to be on the side of the children.
Yes, that's a great bumper sticker.
That money, just as yours, saying that there needs to be more money. You know that the reason the state education budget is down is because of the end of one-time federal dollars.
That's right.
That your party led the spending as if it was going to be there in perpetuity.
Those damn teachers are at it again. It's great applause line.
Let's take a break and they'll keep at it.
But
back here at Landerhaven.
Good job. Inflation, unemployment, the cities, all very important issues, but they pale into insignificance in the life and duties of a president when compared with the control of nuclear weapons. I had a discussion with my daughter Emmy the other day before I came here to ask her what the most important issue was. She said she thought nuclear weaponry.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Raise taxes and I'll say no, and they'll push and I'll say no, and they'll push again and I'll say to them, read my lips. No new taxes.
And the record on that count is clear. In good days and bad, in times of great confidence or great controversy, I have actually shown up here for 8 straight years. Looking back, that was probably a mistake. In just 8 years, I've given you enough material for 20 years.
This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
Welcome back, everybody, to our election special at Executive Caters at Landerhaven. All right, we've bloviated enough up here. Now it's your chance to ask some questions and something particular you want to ask. We have microphones about.
My question for the panel is, what changes and incentives do you foresee to entice corporations who have moved overseas to be able to come back to the United States so that we can go ahead and have a more solid workforce?
Stuart, you want to start?
Yeah, if I understood the question.
There's a lot of money overseas with American business and no incentive to bring it back. What would you do to bring that money back, or leave it the way it is?
I mean, whether we have a tax holiday or not, whatever the policy might be, but yes, we need to incentivize job creation here in this country. We need to bring money back to this country. We need to treat companies, corporations, anybody that wants to create jobs here should get tax breaks within, the policy ought to be promoting that, and anybody that takes jobs overseas and elsewhere ought to pay a price for that. We need jobs here. We're talking about that. I think we can all agree upon that. So let's come up with a policy and a program that incentivizes job creation. And I believe that's precisely what the Obama administration has been doing and intends to keep doing.
Bob?
Well, I think without some type of relief to the corporations that are actually hoarding a lot of money overseas, and if you look at what Apple is doing, they have more money overseas and a lot of profits in companies that are here in the United States, billions of dollars. So we have to figure out what is the proper tax rate in order to encourage these dollars to come back in and put it into jobs here and into the infrastructure. And I think that that's something that Congress is going to have to address, and it's going to have to be a bipartisan solution.
I hear all of you saying that the tax code needs to be changed, and I hear some similarities. There are differences, some similarities, though, on how you'd like it to be changed. Am I reading that correctly?
I think so.
I think you are. They should have made us the super committee.
There's a lot of agreements in there that I think that closing of tax loopholes is one area that we have to take a look at. I think that it has to be a bipartisan solution, and if we don't have that, we're going to have not $16 trillion in debt, but we're going to be approaching $20 and $21 trillion in debt in a very short period of time that will far exceed our gross national product, and we can't afford to do that. We'll be in the same place as Greece or Italy or Spain. We have to have a bipartisan solution.
I'll elicit some howls out of perhaps my colleague to the left, to the right, but to the left, and perhaps out of the audience. I believe that you invest here, and if investing in the Cayman Islands is what you want to do, you're not investing in factories in the Cayman Islands. You're hiding your money abroad so as to not be taxed at a rate at home that leaves you with less money. We use the term economic patriots. Friends, putting a lapel pin on your jacket does not make you a patriot, in my humble estimation. Investing at home, allowing consumers to invest at home, encourage economic growth at home, broaden the market at home, having a progressive tax code that reflects how much you make at home. All of those things, I think, broaden the middle class rather than a trickle down from the top. I am a firm believer, having known a little bit about this issue and being the only one on the panel who served on a committee in the legislature dealing with the tax code. If you're taking your money abroad, it's certainly legal, but you're doing it so as to avoid taxes at home.
2 years ago, when the Republicans took control of the House of Representatives, they promised to create jobs and jumpstart the economy. But instead, on day one, they came after women's health by introducing dozens and dozens of laws that really would jeopardize hundreds of years of progress for women. I want to know, and I'm trying to understand, why attacking women and attacking women's health furthers the platform of your party. Why not just create one jobs bill?
Rob, is there a war on women?
No. I don't know that we're the best panel to address it, being all male, both sides of the aisle up here, and I do appreciate the question.
But as a structure of the party?
No. In fact, I mean, you look at the statutory structure of our state party, to take, for example, and it is equally represented, men and women, on our state central committee. We have involvement. We have leadership in women. Our a national leader in our Republican Party, Joanne Davidson, good colleague of Bob and mine, former co-chair of the Republican National Committee and former Speaker of the Ohio House. Our current Lieutenant Governor, Mary Taylor, we're very proud of that leadership. They just happen to, perhaps unfortunately from your viewpoint to the questioner, they happen to be conservative women, and there is a divergence of opinion. But even for women, right now the Obama economy is hurting women more than men, and that's the tragedy that we need to address, is that this president tried. I do believe he very sincerely tried, but this economy has gotten worse. We could get back, for example, to the issue of taxes and how taxes are more severely impacting any disparate group. You talk about, Chris, the idea of taking money offshore and that's not patriotic. Unfortunately, we have a complex tax system that encourages that, and we're punishing success. In fact, your party, you personally, are criticizing success in Mitt Romney and Bain Capital instead of rewarding success in this country. What we're about as a party is about rewarding success and equality of opportunity for men, for women, for those who are of any different race or creed, color or religion. That's the idea and the foundation of the Republican Party.
Criticizing success at any cost. When Bain Capital purchased Stage Stores and dismantled it, my hometown of Port Clinton lost 16 jobs. It may not matter much in a big county like Cuyahoga County, but in Port Clinton, when 16 people lose their jobs, you know who they are. They sit next to you at the football game. You know who they are. That building still sits empty 12 years later. Success at what cost? I celebrate the free market. I employ 500 people. I know a little bit about the workers' compensation system. I know a little bit about health care. And I also know that 2/3 of the people who work for me happen to be women, and I am the last person who should decide whether they should or shouldn't get access to health care, to contraceptive health care that's covered, frankly, under my health insurance policy funded through Medical Mutual of Ohio. I am the last person who should decide whether a 25-year-old girl, a young lady who's suffering from endometriosis, should get access to contraceptive health care. I am the last person who should make a decision as to whether or not the women who work at the Ohio Democratic Party who have access to health care that is funded by the party should have access to reproductive health care. I am absolutely the last person who should make those decisions. Those decisions should be left up to the women who need that access and frankly, war may be rhetorically strong to some. If you're that 25-year-old woman, you feel like there's a war, because you shouldn't be worrying about what's happening in her uterus. You should be worrying about what's happening in her neighborhood.
And while we're punishing, while we're at war with success, apparently we are, Chris.
Yes.
I'm not at war with success. I just don't understand why we're rewarding failure. When Wall Street failed us all in 2008, what price did they pay? Everybody in this room paid that price. So we have a way of if it's heads I win and tails you lose.
Winners and losers.
We've created this impossible scenario where too big to fail is precisely the cause. We can't have reasonable regulation because, you know, too much government interference. Well, ask people who lost their houses, who are underwater today because of the mortgage crisis. How do they feel about reasonable regulation?
Bob, you want to say something, then we'll go to the next question.
No, I think that reasonable regulation, and getting back to Chris's point, there's no objection. It's a matter of who pays for it. Is the government going to pay for it, or is the individual going to pay for it? There are choices that we make as we go through life, and government shouldn't be making those choices for anybody, men or women. It's the individual that has the opportunity to make those choices, and we have floors to take care of it, whether it's through the welfare system or any place else, for those who are truly in need.
So you believe women should have the right to control their own body and their own choices when it comes to reproductive health care?
We're talking about who pays for it, Chris.
So you're pro-choice, Bob Bennett?
Pardon?
You're pro-choice?
We're talking about
you're a modern guy there, Bob.
Don't put that on me. I'm pro-life.
But you just suggested the government shouldn't have a role in these decisions, that somehow the welfare department was going to offer the assistance to these people. So
Chris,
it's
we're
a
talking
convoluted...
about who pays for it. Okay? That's all I'm
So if a
saying.
woman
There's
who
no
wants-
one running for office this year on national level or up here on this stage who is talking about limiting access to any of that, Chris,
Yes.
and you know that.
It's in your plank. You are a party that believes
That is not
you are opposed to abortion in all cases, including rape and incest in the health of the mother. It is in your plank, like Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, is in ours. That's in your plank that you voted on, Bob Bennett, as a member of the Republican National Committee just 2 weeks ago.
One
That's
more
the
question
fact.
before the break. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Russell Johnson. I'm the councilman for Richmond Heights, Ward 2. And I'd like to just ask the panel up there, why is it that governors like Christie and Kasich take full advantage of saying that they balance their budgets, but what they've done is taken the monies out of local government, told us to balance our budget any way we could, asked our taxpayers for some more money, so then they can say, hey, I balanced the budget. You cut all the money for local government out of local government, and then you asked us to make bricks without hay.
Rob, you start. We got about a minute here.
Sure, I think what you start with is, number one, those aren't the only cuts, and those didn't take all the money out of local government, but it is an idea that we're not going to continue to have the inefficiency of taking $1 down to Columbus just to send 50 cents back to your community. What we want to do is keep local control. That's something that this party believes in, and that this country was founded upon, is that local control, the government closest to the people, is best.
Stuart?
Yeah, but that's not what happens.
Right.
Our taxes go to Columbus and they stay there.
Right.
So that all we're asking is give us, so if that's the program, then John Kasich should say, fine, don't send us any money, keep your money locally.
That's why
but that's not what happened.
That's why we've been cutting taxes, and why Governor Kasich is going to be presenting forward further tax cuts, yet you're opposed to them. You want to increase taxes on anybody you can, anyone you think in your estimation can afford it.
Come on, Rob.
No, I appreciate you got a difficult
Where do you
position
draw
to
the line?
justify.
How rich is too rich?
That's all right.
All right, it's time for Harlan to say a few words.
Talk to this mayor over
The
here.
largest property tax cut
Harlan, where
in
are you?
history was passed under Ted Stewart.
There he is.
It's a fact.
Why do you
you
put
just make
me in
these
the
facts
middle
up.
of a fight like this?
Because it's fun.
No one's
I think
ever
this is great.
Is that what you do?
It's
true, though.
You know, it's
Talk to me.
interesting that you should do this and talk like this because this is a country built on freedom of religion. And as far as I'm concerned, if religion is mixed up in all this stuff, the government doesn't have a right to deal with it. On the other hand, I know that's not a popular thing to say. On the other hand, there's been a couple of things that have happened lately that are very important to a person like me. I think we have found out that biofuels don't work. I think we are on the verge of allowing our food sources to come to the people that need the food rather than use it on gasoline, which I think we can find within our own country. However, the real thing I want to know is I have held November 14th, and we haven't committed, and I'd like to invite this panel back and talk about the aftermath after the election. We would really be honored to do that.
Thank you, Harlan. You may, but maybe not at this moment. Has this been very informative for everybody here today? Good. That's what it was supposed to be about. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time, your passion as well on both sides. It's exciting to see. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hope you had a great lunch. And we're leaving you now, our election special 2012 from Landerhaven. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Bill.
That one's true.
Please join us on Wednesday, October the 10th, when Executive Caterers Corporate Club at Landerhaven looks at transforming Cleveland's schools with Mayor Frank Jackson and Cleveland Metropolitan School District Superintendent Eric Gordon. The program will be moderated by Leon Bibb, Emmy Award-winning news anchor from Channel 5.
Corporate Club is brought to you by Executive Caterers, a special place for special occasions. Medical Mutual of Ohio, Ohio's Get Well card, offering health plans for life. Time Warner Business Class, making more of every minute with the speed you need. Inside Business Magazine, your source for business in Northeastern Ohio. Fox 8 WJW Television, 90.3 Idea Stream, the all-day brain food. 8LG Computer, consulting and training. Signs PDQ, professional, dependable quality. And Jones for printing services. Supporting sponsorships are brought to you by the Greater Cleveland Partnership, a catalyst for change. Northern Ohio Chambers of Commerce. A portion of the proceeds of the Corporate Club at Landerhaven benefits Junior Achievement of Greater Cleveland.